The alarm on the cracked phone blinked 5:12. Outside, the city was just waking up. In a tiny room, Jonah sat up slowly. He was 28, with a collection of small failures and a degree that had only brought him debt. He decided right then and there that 2026 wouldn't be just another year he survived. It was a quiet decision, the kind you only recognize as important much later. On his way to work, he took a different route, an alley he'd never tried before. There, an old man was feeding pigeons. "You look like you're carrying a storm," the man said. Jonah, surprisingly, told him about his decision to change. The old man smiled. "Storms are wasted if you don't plant seeds after." He handed Jonah a small paper packet. Inside were 3 sunflower seeds and a note. "Plant where they'll be seen, not where they'll be safe." It was strange, and it was perfect. That day at his warehouse job, a note from an old college friend, Amir, caught his eye. It was an invitation to a creative co-op. For the first time in a long while, Jonah smiled. Maybe the seeds weren't just seeds. That night, instead of scrolling through his phone, he opened a notebook and wrote down 3 things he wanted to change: his health, his work, and his courage. He wrote the word courage twice. He started with small experiments. He walked a different way to work each day. He made soup on Sundays for his lunch all week. He called his mom and asked for recipes. He even updated his resume, really edited it, and reached out to Amir. Amir's cafe smelled of cinnamon and optimism. The co-op wasn't a job offer. It was a place to volunteer, to learn, to try. Jonah started managing their inventory and social media. The days were long, juggling the warehouse and the cafe, but he felt alive in a way he hadn't before. He was learning that small, careful tasks build trust. He also learned that change isn't a straight line. One misstep could undo a week of progress. You just have to get up one more time than you fall. One evening, he saw a flyer for a Year of Change challenge. It sounded cheesy, but he felt a pull. He signed up. The challenge was simple: 52 small, deliberate actions over the year. His first post was almost embarrassing. "Today I packed soup for lunch, called my mom, and planted 3 sunflower seeds on my windowsill." But then people commented. A woman named Lila messaged him, "You're not the only one." I started with 1 push-up. They met for coffee. It turned out that connection, even online, can be the scaffolding you need to build a new life. Life, of course, threw him curveballs. The co-op had to cut hours. He was exhausted, physically and emotionally. He almost gave up. But he reached out to his online group, and Lala's words cut through the noise. "Tell me 3 things you can do tomorrow that will matter in a year." That night, he looked at the 3 tiny seeds he'd planted in a chipped mug. He promised to water them, setting an alarm as a reminder, and then a small miracle. One morning, a tiny green shoot broke through the soil. He took a picture and posted it. Someone replied, "You grew a thing." That's how it starts. He started seeing growth everywhere. In his friends, in his neighborhood, in himself. But growth also means facing difficult things. His father's health was declining. Jonah realized courage wasn't just for big moments, but for quiet, honest conversations. He took a bus to see him. They talked, they argued, they reconnected. "You're trying," his father said, and in that moment, courage felt like a steady, quiet current. Back in the city, his sunflowers grew. They weren't perfect, but they were real. He gave one to Leela. They became a symbol of patience, of showing up, of watering what you want to grow. Summer brought a victory. The co-op got a grant. Jonah, who had learned how to tell a story on social media, helped create a campaign about their journey of honest trying. It worked. Orders went up. A local journalist wrote a story about them. Jonah stood in the back during the interview, no longer feeling invisible, but like a part of something that mattered. Change isn't all sunshine, though. In the fall, his past debts caught up with him. The old voice of self-doubt whispered in his ear. But this time, instead of crumbling, he made a plan. He negotiated payments. He sold things he didn't need. He took on a side gig writing. And his community rallied around him. Amir gave him more hours. Layla found him a freelance client. The bakery owner taught him to make croissants. Practical help, he learned, is a powerful form of love. The year didn't end with a dramatic transformation. It ended with an accumulation of small things. Deeper friendships, a rent payment he could afford, sunflowers reaching for the sky, and a father who smiled more. On New Year's Eve, Jonah stood on his roof, watching fireworks. He thought about the old man, the seeds, the online challenge, his father's hand. He didn't look like a new person. He looked like someone who had chosen day after day to keep showing up. That was the real magic. A child from the floor below asked him, "Are you going to do something big next year?" Jonah smiled. "I'm going to do 1,000 small things," he said. He realized that real change rarely arrives in a single grand moment. It arrives like steady water on stone, 100 small acts that wear away the old self until a new one can stand. In his notebook, he wrote one last line for the year: "I planted 3 seeds. They grew into reasons to keep going." He didn't know what the next year would bring. He only knew that this was the year he learned to be brave in the small rooms of his life. And that the work of change would continue not as a spectacle, but as a daily practice. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, remember that your own year of change can start with just one small seed. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about the quiet power of trying. See you next time. The cafe where Jonah worked had become his second home. Every morning he arrived before sunrise, flipping the lights on, the smell of roasted beans rising like a prayer. Amir, ever the dreamer, had big plans. He wanted to expand their co-op into a full creative hub. Art workshops, storytelling nights, even a podcast studio for local voices. Jonah believed in that vision. He poured his time, his energy, and his fragile optimism into making it real. One foggy morning, Amir handed him a folder. Inside were partnership papers and a list of potential investors. "You've been the backbone of this place," Amir said, his voice full of sincerity. "I want you to come on board as a partner." Jonah stared at the papers as if they were sacred. A partnership, that meant commitment, ownership, responsibility. It also meant a massive risk. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. Amir just grinned. "You've earned it," Jonah signed. His signature trembled a little, like a flame just learning to stand on its own. He didn't know then that this single decision would test every inch of the man he was trying to become. The expansion began too fast. New equipment, new staff, a bigger rent. Amir was all enthusiasm. Jonah was all caution. And sometimes they collided like weather fronts. "You're thinking too small," Amir snapped one afternoon during a heated discussion about finances. "And you're forgetting the bills?" Jonah shot back, his voice tight. Their friendship began to shift, not collapse, but bend under the heavy weight of ambition. To keep the peace, Jonah just worked harder. He started working longer hours, cleaning tables after midnight, writing social media posts until his eyes blurred, and cold calling investors who never called back. One night, he came home to find the sunflowers on his windowsill drooping, their heads bowed as if in prayer. He hadn't watered them in days. He whispered to them, "I'm sorry. I've been too busy trying to become someone." And in that quiet moment, he realized that was exactly how he was treating himself. It was raining the night the accountant called. The co-op's funds were dangerously low. Receipts didn't match the bank statements. The numbers just weren't adding up. A cold dread washed over Jonah. He confronted Amir the next morning, his voice low but sharp. "Where's the money, Amir?" Amir rubbed his temples, avoiding eye contact. I borrowed some of it. Just for a few weeks. I had a personal project. You asterisk, what asterisk? Jonah's voice cracked. "It's temporary," Amir said quickly. "Don't overreact." But it wasn't temporary. The borrowed money had vanished into an idea that never took flight, a failed pop-up restaurant Amir had secretly invested in. Jonah's chest burned with a mix of anger and betrayal. All their work, all their trust, was now balanced on the edge of that one catastrophic mistake. "You could have told me," Jonah said, the words heavy with disappointment. Amir just looked down, shame flickering across his face like a dying candle. "I thought I could fix it before you noticed." Jonah left without slamming the door, which somehow felt so much worse. The weeks that followed were a slow, painful collapse. Bills stacked up like monuments to their failure. Investors withdrew their support. The team scattered, finding other jobs. Jonah tried to hold it all together, but fatigue became his native language. He stopped eating well, stopped talking to his friend Lila, and stopped writing in the online challenge forum that had once been his lifeline. His world shrank back to the size of his failure. One night, unable to sleep, he walked to the alley where it had all begun, where the old man had given him the sunflower seeds. But the alley was empty now. The bakery wall was clean, painted over, erasing the past. Jonah sat on the wet pavement, the cold seeping into his bones, and let the rain wash over his face. He whispered to the empty air, "I was changing. I swear I was changing, but life doesn't stop for oaths. He was learning the hard way that change isn't a reward, it's a practice. He remembered something his father once said. Son, the hardest part of climbing is when you've gone too far to quit, but you're too tired to continue. Jonah was there now in that dangerous, exhausting middle. He sat at the hospital bed long after everyone else had left, tracing the wrinkles in his father's hands, trying to memorize them. The silence in that room felt heavier than grief. It felt like an inheritance, the kind made of lessons, not money. On the ride home, Jonah opened his father's old book, The Art of Small Things. As he did, a folded note fell out. In his father's familiar handwriting, it said, "You don't change your life once. You change it again and again, every time it starts to fall apart." Jonah pressed the small piece of paper to his chest. For the first time in months, he let himself cry not because of loss, but because the words felt like a hand reaching across time to guide him. He decided right then to begin again. He sold what was left of the co-op's equipment. He paid back the debts Amir couldn't, and then, quietly, he started a new project. He created a small online community called Xchange digital space for people trying to change, one small step at a time. He didn't promise perfection. He only promised honesty. He wrote about his failures, his father's note, his mistakes, and the sunflowers. He didn't expect anyone to read it. But they did. Messages began arriving from strangers, from members of his old forum, from people who said, "I thought I was the only one failing my way forward." Jonah didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a mirror cracked, but still catching the light. Months later, Amir came back. He looked thinner, older. He stood at the cafe's locked door and said softly, "I ruined what we built." Jonah nodded. "You did." "I'm sorry," Amir whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Jonah could have turned away, filled with resentment. But something inside him had changed, not the part that forgets, but the part that forgives. "I forgive you," Jonah said, the words feeling true, "but I can't rebuild what's gone. I'm building something else now." Amir smiled through his tears. "Then maybe this time I'll just cheer for you." They shook hands not as partners, but as two men who had both fallen and found solid ground again. Xchange grew quietly 1,000 followers, then 10,000. People posted about their first jobs, their reconciliations, their relapses, and their recoveries. Jonah replied to every comment he could. He didn't want it to be about him. He wanted it to be about us, the ones who are still trying, still fighting. Lila, his old friend, joined the project as a co-writer. They spent long nights editing stories, laughing, and sometimes crying at the raw honesty that strangers shared. One night, while looking at the platform's analytics, Lila said, "Do you realize people are calling this a movement?" Jonah smiled faintly. "It's just people being honest." "Exactly," she said. "That's what changes things." The last week of the year was cold again. Jonah stood by his window, watching snowflakes collect in the flower pot that once held his vibrant sunflowers. Only dry stems remained, but he didn't throw them away. He let them stay as proof that something beautiful had once grown there. He opened his notebook, the same one from last year, and wrote, "Change isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to give up." As fireworks bloomed across the city once more, Jonah whispered the words that had started it all. "Do something this year that makes people stop and stare not at what you achieved, but at how much you've changed." He smiled, not because the world was perfect, but because he finally understood. The difficult, messy middle, that's where real transformation lives. The lights outside shimmered, and somewhere in the alley, a pigeon cooed like an old echo, as if the universe was quietly saying, "You did it. Now keep going." Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know. We'll see you in the next one. Have you ever felt like you failed so hard that starting over seemed impossible? What if that single moment of failure could spark a global movement? This is the story of Jonah, and it might just change the way you see your own struggles. It all started small. After hitting rock bottom, Jonah created a simple website called Xchange, a place for people to share their stories of transformation. He watched, completely stunned, as the community grew from a handful of users to thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Students, mothers, factory workers, soldiers, people from every corner of the globe began posting their own stories of resilience under the hashtag. Every morning, Jonah would open his laptop to a world map dotted with glowing lights. each one representing a person daring to begin again. One morning, his friend Lila looked at him, her coffee cup in hand, and said, "Jonah, I think this is bigger than us now." He smiled, still in awe. "It was never about us," he replied. "It was about them, the ones who needed a reason to try again." But he could feel it a shift. The world was watching, and the weight of that attention was about to test everything he thought he knew. Then, the call came. A major magazine wanted to feature his story, the man who turned failure into a movement. Jonah hesitated. He had always hidden behind the stories of others. Now they wanted his face, his past, his pain. Lila's voice was gentle but firm. "You have to tell it. If you hide, people will think transformation is faceless. But if you show up scars and all, they'll believe it's possible for them too," he agreed. In a small studio filled with light, a journalist asked him the question that would change everything. "What made you start Xchange?" Jonah looked straight into the camera and said quietly, "I was tired of waiting for my life to change. So I decided to change it myself. I failed, I lost, I rebuilt, and I realized everyone deserves that chance." The video went viral. Overnight, Xchange was trending worldwide. Sponsors called, companies wanted to collaborate, and politicians started quoting his words. For the first time, Jonah felt something he'd never experienced before. Pressure disguised as praise. Success came like a tidal wave, fast and overwhelming. His inbox was a constant flood of invitations to speak, inspire, and lead. But with growth came the noise. Online forums dissected his past, accusing him of turning pain into profit. Critics claimed he was a fraud. Jonah read every single comment. He lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was still the same man who once found hope in watering a dying sunflower. Lila saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "Jonah, you can't carry this entire movement on your back," she warned. "I have to," he insisted. "If I let go, people will lose faith." She whispered words that would linger in his mind for weeks. "Maybe they don't need your perfection. Maybe they just need your truth." The breaking point came just before the first global Xchange Summit in New York. After weeks of relentless preparation, his body simply gave out. The doctor called it severe burnout. His body called it surrender. Lila found him in his apartment, pale and hollow-eyed. "What if I'm just a fraud who got lucky?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. She shook her head firmly. "No, you're proof that broken things can build something beautiful. But even builders need to rest." Jonah never made it to New York. The summit went on without him. But as he watched the live stream from his bed, something extraordinary happened. The people didn't need him on that stage. They were telling their own stories, speaking his message in their own voices. The stage was filled with faces of every color, age, and background, all echoing the same powerful idea. "I changed because I decided to try." Tears streamed down Jonah's face as he finally understood. A true movement doesn't need its creator to stand at the front. It thrives when its people stand together. One evening, an email arrived that changed his perspective forever. It was from a 17-year-old girl in Kenya named Elisha. She wrote, "I was ready to give up. I thought my life was over. Then I found Xchange. I planted 3 sunflower seeds just like you did. Now I'm still here, still trying, still growing." Jonah read her words over and over, printing them out and pinning them above his desk. That letter became his anchor, the proof that one honest life can echo across the world. Soon after, investors came with a tempting offer: turn Xchange into a subscription-based app and make millions. It was the dream, right? Fame, fortune, global scale. The old Jonah would have jumped at it. But something had changed within him. He called Lila. "If we do this," he said, "we'll lose what made it real. We'll become another business selling hope instead of living it." Lila agreed without hesitation. "Then let's stay free. Let's stay human." They declined the offer, choosing instead to partner with charities, schools, and mental health centers. They chose real change over marketable change. Years later, Jonah returned to his old neighborhood. The bakery was still there, the alley still echoed with pigeons, and sitting on the very same bench was the old man who had given him the sunflower seeds. "You again," the old man chuckled. "Did the seeds grow?" Jonah smiled. "More than I ever imagined." He told him everything. The old man listened quietly and said, "I told you to plant where they'd be seen, not where they'd be safe. You did that. And now the world can see what grows when one man chooses to change. Xchange became a living archive of millions of stories, a resource for hope and healing used in schools, recovery centers, and communities worldwide. Jonah was no longer chasing change. He was living it. One afternoon, he knelt at his father's grave and placed 3 sunflower seeds beside the headstone. "I finally understand, Dad," he whispered. "Change doesn't end. It just evolves." As the year closed, Jonah stood on a rooftop with Lila, watching the city lights glow like constellations of human effort. "What now?" she asked. He smiled. "Now we keep going. Change isn't a year. It's a lifetime." He opened his notebook and wrote a final note to himself. "When the world watches, don't perform, stay real. When success comes, don't rise, stay rooted. When life changes, don't run, stay grateful." He looked out at the horizon, not for what he'd achieved, but for what was still waiting to grow. And somewhere, unseen but felt, the world whispered back, "Keep planting. Thank you for watching." If this story resonated with you, remember that your own story of change matters. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this message with someone who might need it. Until next time, keep growing.